To start making our taco, we are going to begin with the shell. So you're going to want some yellow chunky yarn and a 5mm crochet hook. So to start, we will work into a magic ring, and into that magic ring we're going to do 8 single crochets. And then for round 2, we are going to increase into every single stitch. So this will bring our stitch count up to a 16 stitches for round 2. For round 3, we are going to do a single crochet in the first stitch, and then we are going to increase, and this will bring our stitch count up to 24 stitches. For round 4, we are going to do 2 single crochets in the first 2 stitches, followed by an increase, which will bring our stitch count up to 32 stitches. For round 5, we are going to do 3 single crochets, followed by an increase, which will bring our stitch count up to 40 stitches. For round 6, we are going to do 4 single crochets, followed by an increase, and this will bring our stitch count up to 48 stitches. For round 7, we are going to do 5 single crochets followed by an increase, and this will bring our stitch count up to 56 stitches for this round. Round 8 is going to be our last round for our shell, and we're just going to do a single crochet into every single stitch. So this will keep our stitch count at 56 stitches for this round. After we have finished round 8, you can cut off your yarn and secure the end. You don't have to cut a long tail because we're not going to be attaching the shell to anything else. We're just merely going to weave in the end. So once you've cut off the end, weave in the end or the tail of your yarn in whatever way you usually do. Now we have finished our shell, we are going to move on to the meat. So for the meat, you want to take some brown chunky yarn, and we're going to start by doing a chain of 16 stitches. After we have completed our chain, we are going to skip the first stitch, and into the second stitch along our chain we are going to do a single crochet. We're going to do a single crochet in every single stitch along this chain. So this should keep our stitch count at 15 stitches. Once we reach the end of the row, we will do a chain 1 and turn, and then we will do 15 single crochets. So that's a single crochet in every stitch along our row. When we get to the end of this row, instead of chaining 1 and turning, we're going to turn our work on the side, and into the very end of our work we are going to do 3 single crochets into that one stitch. And then we're going to flip our work, so we will now be working into the bottom of the chain, and then we will do 15 more single crochets, and when we get to the other end we will do 3 more single crochets in that very final stitch. So we will be increasing in this round. So we're now working in the round rather than along rows. For this next round, we are going to do 17 single crochets, followed by an increase of 3 stitches in the very top stitch, followed by 17 single crochets, and then another increase in the very last stitch of 3 single crochets in one stitch. For our last round, we are going to do 19 single crochets, followed by an increase where we do 3 single crochets in one stitch, followed by 19 more single crochets, and then another increase of 3 stitches in one stitch. Once we've finished that is our meat section complete, so we can just tie off our yarn and cut a length of string long enough to wrap around the entirety of the meat so we can attach it to the shell later on. Next we are going to be doing our sour cream. So this is the easiest one. All we need is some white yarn, and we are going to be doing a chain of 32 stitches. Once we've finished that chain, we can just tie off the yarn. So what you want to do is have quite a long tail for this chain when we cut it off. So I do about a 30cm tail. You can just cut it off and then pull it through how you would do with everything else. And that is all you need to do for the sour cream. Next up we have the lettuce. So you want to take your green chunky yarn, and we're going to do 2 of these pieces of lettuce. So again, we're going to start with a chain. This time we're going to do a chain of 15 stitches. And then after we've finished this chain, we're going to do another stitch at the end, turn our work. We're going to skip that very first stitch, and then into that second stitch along our chain, we're going to do 2 double crochets. So we are going to be increasing into every stitch along this chain using double crochets. So by the end of the row, you should have 30 stitches. You'll notice your work starts to get a bit curvy, but don't worry about that, it's meant to happen, and I'll explain why later on when we attach it to the shell. So after you have finished doing all your increases, you can see it's got a bit curly. Don't worry about that, just cut a tail of about 30cm in length, and then tie off your yarn in the same way you usually do. Finally, we have the tomatoes, and we're going to want to make 4 of these tomatoes. So we're going to start by doing a magic ring, and into that magic ring we are going to do 6 single crochets. So this will be the only round we do for the tomatoes, as we want them to be quite small in size. If you're doing a larger taco, I'd recommend doing an extra round, or maybe of increases in the next round to make them larger. But if you're following my pattern, then 1 round of single crochets is sufficient. So you want to pull that tight. I do a double knot with the yarn just to make sure it's nice and secure and it doesn't come unravelled. And then once you've done your double knot, you're just going to do a slip stitch into that very first stitch to make the tomato look nice and circular. Then once you've done that slip stitch, you can start to tie off your yarn. You only need about a 15cm in length when you're tying this off, as there won't be much to sew on. We have now made all the pieces we need for our taco, so you should have the lettuce, sour cream, and the shell, which we don't need at the minute, so I'll just push them aside. What we're going to start with is the meat and the tomatoes. So we want to take one of your tomatoes and a yarn needle, and we are going to attach the tomatoes onto the meat. So the way I like to do it is in a zigzag pattern. You don't have to follow the same pattern, but I like to do a zigzag just to make them nice and even. We just want to tuck that tail behind the tomato so it's nice and hidden. And then using our yarn needle, we are simply going to push the needle all the way through both the tomato and the meat so it comes out of the back. And then we're going to do the reverse, so through the back of the meat, tomato out through the front. And we're just going to do this all the way around the tomato until it feels nice and secure, at which point we can then tie it off at the back. So when you tie it off at the back, you can just do a knot, or you can follow the methods we have done so previously. But you want to do this for all 4 of your tomatoes. Once you have attached all your tomatoes, it should look something just like this, a bit like a pizza with no cheese. So next we're going to attach our sour cream. Again, I like to do a zigzag pattern, so I just lay it out roughly how I want it. And then I just place the corner at the very end, and with the same like how I did with the tomatoes, I just push my needle all the way through to the back of the meat. And then what you're going to do is push it back through the meat, through the sour cream, almost just like you're sewing onto a piece of fabric. And then you're going to keep repeating it, pushing it through the sour cream and the meat, and then back through the back. And you're going to do this all the way along the sour cream until it is all secured. Next we are going to attach the meat to the shell itself. So this is one of the trickier parts, so I would recommend just pinning your meat onto the shell so you can see how you'd like it. It does look a bit wonky at the minute, but as you can see it's starting to get its curved shape, and once we fill it with polyfill it will start to bulk out and look less wonky. So what you want to do is, taking your yarn needle again, you want to pick up just one of the front loops of the stitches of the shell with your needle. You don't want to poke it all the way through the shell, because then the brown yarn will show through the back of the yellow yarn that we have used for the shell. See, we want to keep it nice and yellow on the shell. So what you want to do is just pick up one stitch from the meat, the front of the stitch from the shell, and then pull your needle all the way through. It will be quite fiddly and tricky to do. You want to do this about 3/4 of the way round. Now we are 3/4 of the way round. I still have this hole. We're going to use this opportunity to stuff our taco with polyfill, and you want to make sure that you're pushing that polyfill all the way to the bottom of the taco to make sure that it's all nice and padded out all the way through. And once we have finished stuffing the polyfill, I've just finished tying off my yarn. So I finished sewing all the way around the meat. We're now going to do the same thing we've done previously to tie off. I'm just going to do a knot, which I'll pull tightly to hide it, and then we're going to pull our yarn through where we've just inserted our needle, pull it through to a random space in the meat, and then we can cut off our yarn, and it should be nice and secure. Finally, we have got to attach the lettuce to the taco. So as you can see, the lettuce is very curly, but all we want to do is straighten it out. And using that straight line at the base, we're going to insert it into the crease in between the meat and the shell. And as you can see, when you straighten it out, the top bit goes all wavy, just like a piece of lettuce. So to attach it, we are going to do the same method we've been doing throughout. Using our yarn needle, we are going to insert it into the brown meat. So we want that very last stitch of the brown meat before the edge of the shell. And we're just going to pull it all the way through. And we're going to keep repeating the process. We're going to go pick up one stitch from the lettuce, one stitch from the meat, and pulling our needle all the way through. We want to do this for both pieces of lettuce. You don't have to position the lettuce in any particular way. It's just whatever looks best on your taco itself. So as you can see, the edge of the lettuce is nice and flush with the shell, and it started to go curvy at the top rather than a spiral when we were making it. So you can just tie off your lettuce in the same way we've done with everything else. Just do a knot, and then we can pull our yarn through and cut it off. And then once you've done that for both sides of your taco, that is everything done. Next we're going to create our legs, and you want to make 4 of these. So using the yellow yarn that you used for the shell, you want to do for round 1 a magic ring, and into that magic ring you are going to do 4 single crochets. For round 2, you are going to increase into every single stitch, so this will bring your stitch count up to 8 stitches for round 2. For round 3, we are going to do a single crochet into every stitch, so this will keep our stitch count to 8 stitches for this round. That is the end of how to create one of your feet. So you want to make 4 of these feet. So at the end of the 3rd round, just cut a length of yarn about 30 centimeters in length and tie it off in the way you would normally. We are now going to attach the feet, so I use pins to keep them in place just to mark where I want all 4. So you want 2 at the front, 2 at the back. I have about a 3-finger width in between the front and the back ones, and about a 1 or 2 finger width in between the front and the back other 2. So we're going to attach in the same way we have been attaching everything else. So we're going to insert our hook into the body. We're going to pull up that 1 stitch from the body, and then what we're going to do is insert our hook through both the body and the foot or the leg itself and pull our yarn through both. And we're going to continue this all the way around the foot. There's no need to fill the foot with polyfill, we can just use the tail ends of our yarn to fill it, and that should be enough to make it nice and firm. And you want to be doing this with all 4 feet. Next we're going to make the tail, so we're going to use the same yellow yarn that we just used for the feet, and for round 1 we are going to do a magic ring, and into that magic ring we are going to do 4 single crochets. For round 2, you are going to do a single crochet into the first stitch, and then into the second stitch you are going to increase, and this will bring your stitch count up to 6 stitches for round 2. For round 3, you are going to do the same thing again. You will do a single crochet into the first stitch, followed by an increase in the second stitch, and this will bring your stitch count up to 9 stitches for this round. For round 4, you are going to do a single crochet into the first 2 stitches, and then into the third stitch you are going to do an increase, and this will bring your stitch count up to 12 stitches for round 4. For round 5, you want to do a single crochet into the first 3 stitches, followed by an increase in the 4th stitch, and this will bring the stitch count up to 15 stitches. We have now finished making the tail, so you can cut off your yarn about 30 centimeters in length and just tie it off in the same way you would do normally. You can put a little bit of polyfill in the tail, but that is personal preference whether you want to or not. Next we are going to be making the head, so you want to continue using the same yellow yarn that you've used previously. So into round 1 we are going to be making a magic ring, and in that magic ring we are going to do 8 single crochets. For round 2 we are going to increase into every single stitch, and this will bring our stitch count to 16 stitches. For round 3 we are going to do a single crochet into the first stitch, followed by an increase in the second stitch, which will bring the stitch count to 24 stitches. For rounds 4 through till 7 we are just going to do a single crochet into every stitch. So this will keep our stitch count at 24 stitches for all 4 rounds. For round 8 we are going to start decreasing, so you want to do 8 decreases followed by 8 single crochets, and this will bring our stitch count down to 16 stitches. We are now going to place our safety eyes. You want to place those between rounds 5 and 6, making sure that they are 11 stitches apart. At this stage we are also going to fill our head with polyfill. For round 9 we are going to decrease into every stitch, so that will leave us with 8 stitches at the end of round 9. For rounds 10 through 12 we are just going to do a single crochet in every stitch. This will keep our stitch count at 8 stitches for each of these rounds. If you would like a longer neck, then feel free to add more rounds of single crochets onto the end of round 12. We have now finished making our head, so you can cut off your yarn about 30 centimeters in length and tie it off in the same way you would do normally. I also use this opportunity to fill the neck with polyfill, making sure it is quite firm as it will need to hold up the weight of the head. We are now going to attach the tail to the main taco, so it doesn't matter what end you place the tail. If you have one end that is nicer than the other, maybe save that for the head and put the tail on the less nice end, but otherwise it doesn't really matter, you can just pin it on where it looks best for your taco. So we're going to use the same methods we have done previously to attach. We're just going to pick up one stitch with our needle and pull it through, and then we're going to pull through our needle through both the tail and the main taco itself. And we're going to do this all the way around the tail until it's nice and secure. We are now going to attach the head, so you want to do that the opposite end to the tail. You can see I've pinned it in place. I've put the base of the head or the neck on the ledge of the taco shell itself, and I'm going to work around that first, attaching it in the same way we have done previously. So picking up one stitch from the shell, pulling it all the way through. This is going to be quite fiddly. Don't worry if it falls off like mine has, we can just reattach it. And then after we've pulled it through that one stitch, we are then going to pull the needle with one stitch in the head and one stitch in the taco, and keep doing that all the way around the head until it's nice and secure. If you have attached the head to the shell in the same way I have, you can see there's a lot of movement. So what I like to do is make sure that it's nice and secure to the main meat of the taco itself. So what I do is just loop a few stitches with my needle on the main taco shell and then pull that through. And as you tighten that, that will pull your head back and keep it nice and secure against the main body of the taco. And I just do this a couple of times until I feel happy that the head and the neck is nice and secure against the main taco and isn't going to flop forward at all. And then once you have attached the head, you can tie off your yarn and hopefully you should have a Tacosaurus that looks something just like this.